Thanks so much for having me. Thank you, Dawn, for helping me organize this. I appreciate it. Yeah, happy to be back. I am a pretty casual and informal person, so feel free to jump in if you have questions or clarification on anything. Happy to give you a quick overview of some of the work that I've done, and then we'll take some questions. As you can see, I have taken my career from graphic design to a lot more, and I'll kind of walk through that with you. Also, I'm 5 feet tall, and that man is 7'4". Does anybody know who that is on the far left? It's from Harrisonburg. Played for Harrisonburg High School, UVA, coached at Harrisonburg, and still lives here, so if you see him around.
I think Charlottesville has Ralph Sampson Park.
Yep. Yeah, he really gives back to the community, so I'll get more into my work with him later on. Yeah, so I'll give you a quick overview. Thank you, Dawn, for running through a lot of. I'm from New York and outside of Philadelphia. Grew up for most of my life outside the Philadelphia area. Anybody here from tri-state area? All right, there we go. I came to JMU on a College of Business scholarship, and some could say I followed my husband here, who was a year older than me. But nonetheless, JMU had an amazing business program that led me here. I did graphic design on the side for fun, back when you could Photoshop. Don't tell anybody. And was doing this just casually, and woke up one day and said, if this is what I'm doing for fun, I should probably pursue this as a career. Switched over to graphic design my sophomore year. Really just want to show some of the organizations that I was able to get involved in here at JMU. I would always recommend getting out there as much as possible. Through JMU and through actually high school, JMU, and after school, I worked for the Chester County Intermediate Unit, which is under the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Government, bureaucratic, not real exciting design, but it got the job done. I was their first designer there and really helped kind of create the role that I saw for myself. And you'll see that kind of as a theme throughout the work that I've done. I received a couple of awards while I was there. Like I said, it was a little bureaucratic, but they still honored good design through the National School Public Relations Association. From there, I went to a company called Meyer, which is an architecture and interior design firm. So I think it's important to point out that even though everybody has aspirations of joining an agency, I turned down a few agency jobs because they are assholes. No offense to anybody that wants to work for an agency. Sorry, you might have to bleep that out. Everybody that I interviewed with and worked with was just not the kind of person I wanted to be around. It was a lot of pressure for me to prove more than I felt like I needed to prove, a lot of attitude for no apparent reason, a lot of hostility that I lived in rural Pennsylvania. I don't know what that was about. So I decided to pursue an in-house position where I could have more of an impact on the marketing and business development side of things, because as you could tell, I had a passion for business still. So at Meyer, again, was their first graphic designer and helped build a new department within the agency. So like I said, they were architecture and interiors, and I wanted to create a billable department that could do wayfinding, signage, environmental graphics. It was something that I personally had never done before, but was super excited to see how I could apply graphic design to the environment that we were building. Help secure clients like Independence Blue Cross, Merck, UBS. Philly's known for finance and healthcare, so those were some of the big ones. While I was at Meyer, one of my clients was 76 Capital, the firm I currently work for, and we worked on a project to bring Microsoft into Philadelphia. So I really took that project under my wings and wanted to create a marketing package that both looked good aesthetically, but could also convince Microsoft, a Fortune 50 or 10, I don't know, company to come to Philadelphia, which is known as the ugly little sister of New York, when they already had a location there. I designed an app, did all the wayfinding, marketing material, and really just tried to push forward. We got them to agree to come to Philly and launch an innovation center. And I stayed in touch with the team because my coworker was a JMU alum. And he begged me to join the Philly Dukes Alumni Club. I was very shy, still am, didn't like getting out there and meeting people, but realized at that point in my career that it was something I had to do. He's actually the one that's speaking at the College of Business right now, so I have him to thank for bringing me here again. Yeah. So when 76 Capital was hiring their first their first director of marketing position, I don't know. Spirits.
Okay, I think I know what it is, but it's not a short-term. It's a creative shoot in one of the units, and so you're just going to have to talk loud.
All right, I'm going to yell. Yeah. When I interviewed at 76 Capital, it was for Director of Digital Marketing. I thought it was way out of reach, and digital marketing to them was somebody who can do social media and websites. And I went in and said, I can do these things, and here's 10 other things you're not thinking about that I'm going to end up having to do because I'm the only one that knows how. I showed up at several events that the team was speaking at and did the job as if I already had it. It was definitely the most in your face I've ever been in my career, but the venture capital industry is very cutthroat, and it was something that had to be done, so I got the job. Through 76 Capital, through 76 Capital, which is a sports-focused venture capital investment fund. We also have a partnership with a sports marketing agency in New York called Rubicon Talent. I do marketing and social media support for their athlete clients, some of whom you saw on the page before. And at 76 Capital, I launched something called the Athlete Venture Group, which is a group of athlete investors that invest in our fund and then get additional marketing and design support from me and my team. That was the new business venture that landed me on the Forbes 30 Under 30 for sports, because clearly I don't play sports anymore.
I was curious, actually.
Yeah, no, I was up there with like Christian Yelich and Patrick Mahomes, and I can't do any of the things that they can do, but I can help them make money. So that's what got me up there. Still thought it was very important just to note that I volunteer quite a bit in the design community. I've been a mentor through AIGA for several years. If you guys are familiar with the program, I would absolutely recommend signing up and participating. Just recently, like 2 weeks ago, joined the board of Women in Sports Tech to help both females and minorities get more involved in sports business. And some of the other awards that I've gone through, including the Addy Awards, which I'll show you the project that I got here. So just want to show like visually a couple things that I've worked on. You guys are still doing the social sustainability reports. Really excited method. The seeds package here was something that I worked on with Dawn in my senior portfolio class. Yeah, and that was the project that won the Addy Award. People always ask me if I always thought that I was going to be working in sports, and I say no, but then I look back at my portfolio, which included a lot of sports projects, like the Yankees timeline, and I guess I should have seen that coming. Some of the freelance projects, like I mentioned, were really just trying to get out of my comfort zone. One of the clients that I worked for at Meyer doing environmental graphics and wayfinding reached out to me after I left the firm to hire me as a freelancer for their environmental graphics. So I'll talk through some of the qualities that made them even want to do that in the first place. I've separately worked with a lot of athletes for their personal websites and stuff. That's not something we offer at 76. And then logo designs, of course. At Meyer, like I said, since I was their first graphic designer, I was doing just about everything that you can think of. Presentation materials, business development materials, wayfinding, graphics, invites, websites, marketing decks, logos, the list goes on. And then when I went to 76, it was the options were limitless, really, because they're in venture capital. The whole point is to be innovative and entrepreneurial. So they've really empowered me to do pretty much whatever I think is going to drive revenue or impact the overall brand of our business. So a lot of the work that I do now has led to conferences and events. That's just something that's been like exciting for me. It really makes sense for our bottom line to bring entrepreneurs and investors and athletes together. So I'm going to show you a quick video to kind of help visualize exactly what that means for our conferences that typically bring together between 200 and 500 people. So this was our biggest one. I'm gonna, yep. Is that cool? Oh, good point. I didn't test that.
That's all right.
I'll click it so that it opens up in, oh boy, get ready.
Yeah, that works.
My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital, and just super excited to be here in Citizens.
Try to identify everything that had to be designed in this whole thing.
We have an incredible lineup of speakers. We have incredible people in every seat here. We're going to talk about sports tech during the day. We're going to talk about esports. We're going to talk about sports betting, and just learn a lot from some of the experts in the industry.
One thing I would suggest to you all is to make sure that you surround yourself with good people. People that are on the cutting edge, people that are thoughtful, and they take care of you.
Well, I think because people can bet on all these sports has helped the television ratings, which has helped the players, which has helped everybody in the industry.
Millennials, young people, there's an insatiable need for statistics and information. From baseball's perspective, it's one of the things that we like because it's bringing in a younger generation.
The opportunity that digital and social create is this idea of boundaryless fandom. We have to be incredibly ambitious and strategic about our investment in original content.
So I've kept these guys my whole life, their whole careers really, and that's the thing I'm most proud of. And that's through networking, building trust, and building relationships, and keeping that every single day.
If you have an Instagram, if you have LinkedIn from a social media standpoint, you are a brand. We talk about it a lot with the social capital that you're able to provide and having the followings to be able to help different companies.
Just curious if any advice on how to use my time as a college athlete now to kind of
This is Ralph.
in the business world.
So how many
When
business
yeah.
courses have you got since you've been here? You got a lot of work to do.
He's so like in your face.
Traditional media, streaming, social media, the opportunities to monetize is where the value is in sports.
Sports keeps kids out of trouble and brings people together.
Hi, my name is Lauren Findle.
Jason Fox, Ian Goldberg,
Adam Jones,
Evan Weimer,
And I'm the founder of iSport 360.
I'm the founder of Forte.
Chief Executive Officer of C360, founder of Airbuds.
co-founder and CEO of Vici Sports.
Cool. Oh, it's going to start playing something else. The whole pitch competition. Do you guys have 3 hours?
Nope. We do not.
Cool.
Go back.
No, that's perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, yeah, so I thought it'd be really important to show you guys that video just to sort of recap that there's so much more than design that really goes into my day-to-day. So I wanted to share a little bit about what just graphic design, just making things look pretty, has evolved into because I kind of took it by the horns and made it what I was excited to do. So as a director of marketing, it's a lot of project management at this point, building a team, helping manage a team, budgeting. Sounds boring, but it's got to be done. I also manage our investor reporting, fundraising, like I mentioned, strategic partnerships, including sponsorships. I book speaking engagements as well as our events, our portfolio company marketing strategy, which is the Austin. So right now we have about 9 active companies that are all in sports looking to build the next greatest thing. Typically it's just 1 or 2 founders and an idea. So I help them with marketing strategy, website strategy, social media, and then usually hiring the person that would then take the place of our team. Print and digital, including social, website design, development, and management. I'll get into a little bit about why that's important still. Branding, graphic design, of course, conferences and events, photography, videography, lot of public relations and media communications and strategic marketing for the athletes themselves. So it's a lot of not only branding for the firm, but also for the partners, for the athletes, for the companies. They all have different voices. So I'll kind of take a pause if that works. And we can, do you want to talk about the other? I ended on just a few things that I live by, but I can talk through them like while we do the questions, if that works.
Okay. So the first one was just, I guess Meyer was not your first job. Let's talk about that.
Professional, yeah.
Just describe a typical workday for Meyer, enter mid-level, designer out of school. So
sure.
What did a typical day? Think about your hardest day ever.
Well,
day
the day I quit probably was the hardest day ever. Yeah, that's a really good question. So I've always kind of taken jobs that I know I can have a really big impact on. I like to, I guess I like to overwhelm myself and take on a lot more than I'm comfortable with, because that's the only way that I've figured out how to grow. I applied to 75 jobs after I graduated, several of which were in agencies, like I mentioned. I did so many interviews, it was nauseating. Comps for offers, charts, like Excel. I lived in Excel just to like compare the benefits, the salary, all this kind of stuff. And I landed on Meyer because it was still within the arts, and I thought it would be interesting to sort of get into that architecture and interiors space, but also bring like a graphic design flavor to it. It can be very difficult being the first in-house designer at any firm, but I learned even more so when you're working in the arts. A lot of the initial comments that I got back were, well, we've been doing this without you for this long. Why do we need you? Which is a tough conversation to have when you're dealing with so many project managers that have different expectations. There were about 10 project managers and 20 designers when I first started. By the time I left, they were at 65 people overall, and now they're almost at 80. So my goal was really to help build the brand, get recognition throughout the region, but then also arm our business development team with the tools that they needed to sell more. So for me, it's a really complicated mixture of just doing good design work, but then also trying to figure out the goals and motivations of everybody that you're working with. So I'd really say to like put yourself out there, ask really tough questions. The more uncomfortable other people are with the questions you're asking, the more genuine of a response you'll get. That's what I found. So that's loosely what I'd say Meyer was like at first, trying to navigate a space that they had never been in before either.
Mm-hmm. So how does your art major Meyer inform your career, and how did it help you get to where you are now? Because you were a photography major as well.
Yeah. I really wanted to do both graphic design and photography. It was just, like I said, a hobby of mine that I wanted to refine and get really good at, and found it to be a valuable skill when I was marketing myself. Breaking down the classes that you're in, too, I found to be really helpful. So web design, I mentioned, having the ability to code lightly is just something that people at the time, 7 years ago, like, it was a game changer. Even today, having the ability to build and code websites for our portfolio companies allows us to get additional equity rather than just our capital investment. So we actually use a lot of the graphic design, website design, photography, and marketing skills that I and my team have to make a lot more money later on, hopefully. So being able to get additional equity in these businesses because we're able to design social media graphics or help them implement a marketing strategy has been huge. So the classes that I took here, I credit JMU every time. Like everyone I talk to, I credit JMU for just being so hard on me and being able to take feedback and take criticism here is going to be incredibly valuable going forward when you have a CEO in your face saying, I don't care what you think, this is how I want to do things. Like for you to be able to say, here's why I'm doing this, here's what I learned, it's a really tough situation, but it's the business world. And even if you're a designer in the business world, it's going to be a tough conversation to look forward to. Yes.
So what is your advice for JMU students, knowing
Sure.
what you know now? What do you wish you would have paid attention to more in school?
Yeah. The soft skills one and that paying attention to in school is kind of hand in hand, because everybody in this room is eventually going to be doing something great, and you want to know that person 10, 20 years from now and be able to call on them and say, I think we should collaborate. I think our businesses could do work together. So for me, what I wish I had done was just stayed in touch with more people or gotten to know more people outside of even just the design program. Luckily, my husband was in philosophy and public policy, so I did get a little bit of exposure to his group of friends who are now in government and at different corporations that we can partner with. But I'm kind of working backwards now and trying to reconnect with some people that it's been tough because there's been so much distance, and now it looks like I just want something from them, which I do, but I also want to care for people. So it's more about making genuine connections and staying in touch with people. Right after school, I set up, or I guess not right after, because when was Slack created? Whenever Slack was created, a couple of years ago, I set up a channel for some of the JMU graphic design alum, which you all are welcome to email me if you want to get into it, where we just ask each other questions. My friend Chrissy from when I graduated this morning reached out yesterday and said, hey, how do you guys I need to update the code on this website. Does anybody know how to do this? So really just staying in communication with each other and asking if you can help each other is the biggest thing, I'd say.
Much has changed in 7 years since graduating. What do you look for in a portfolio now that you didn't necessarily have to have in 2013?
Yeah.
But I'm here,
Yeah.
It's 7 years and a lot has changed.
Yes. Ironically, I was just telling Trudy about my experience trying to hire a senior graphic designer for my team a couple of months ago. We received, I think, 80 applications, and 2 of which fit my rigorous criteria. So it was a really tough application process, just because of the expectations that were put on me by Dawn and Trudy. Now I have those expectations for everyone else. It makes our brand better. It makes our brand stronger. And what I was really looking for was not only the fundamentals of design. I do think that that's very important, but your ability to communicate why and how you did something, to be entrepreneurial, to know that in eventually 2 or 3 years you could be running your own division within this company, that's the kind of skill that I'm looking for. It's really tough to communicate just in a visual portfolio, but the more you're able to articulate that in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, I just showed up at the event to tell them and show them that I could do the job better than they expected. You really want to put yourself out there and make sure you're communicating both visually and in written format why you're better than everybody else, why you think critically, why you can solve problems. These are really, I included this just so that you all could see truly what I try to live by, and I'm not perfect. I'm still growing and learning and hit struggles all the time. But this is what I expect from my team every day, and I communicate that with them. As we're hiring, we just brought on a new intern, and we're looking for more interns. Reach out to me again if you're in the Philly area. This is what I'm looking for, specifically. So to be able to come to the table with really big ideas that are entrepreneurial, be a problem solver, and have a plan to get things done. My pet peeve is when people come to me and say, how do I do this? Instead of saying, I have this problem, here are 3 things that I think might work, which one do you think's the best? I want to know that you're actively thinking that through. So those are some of the skills that I look for. Integrity, honesty, and professionalism, of course. We've had people that don't show up until 10 or 11 a.m., and that did not fly at all for anyone. I'm going out of order because that's just what I do, but I set seemingly impossible goals for myself. I would recommend that you all figure out what is something that you want to accomplish that you say to yourself, there's absolutely no way. Even having the job I have now, when the job posting came out, I said to my family and to my husband at dinner, I'm not qualified. It's a director job. There's no way. I'm just out of school 5 years. And it took them berating me at dinner to say, no, you're good enough. You have to go for it. I set that impossible goal, and I figured out work backwards, figure out what do I need to do to prove to them that I can do the job. Just because I haven't done it before doesn't mean I can't do it now. I did the same thing when I wanted to make the Forbes list. That was not something that I ever ever thought would happen. And, you hear it in rap songs, like, how could that be me? So I worked backwards and said, who do I know there? What do I need to do to prove that I've built something that is worthy of recognition? And the next goals for myself, I'm, happy to share publicly. I'd be love to run my own company, whether that's a Fortune 500 company or one that I start. But that's really the next aspiration I've set for myself, which seems impossible. It's hard to do, but now I'm trying to work backwards and figure out how do I get where I'm going. So you can always plan for what's within your control. I've learned the very hard way to be flexible with what isn't. My family and I live by the phrase, be an advocate for yourself and others. Nobody's going to do that for you. If you think you deserve a raise, you need to go in there and tell them why, and lay it out in a way that's clear to them. What I've tried to do is, in every business that I've worked, to make myself an asset that cannot be lost. That way you can advocate for yourself when the time comes, not just for compensation, but for anything that you're willing to do, like professional development. And for others, we live in a world where not everybody has the same opportunities that we do. Even being at a 4-year university is a privilege. So look around and try to see, who's being overlooked, and find a way to bring those people up with you and empower them to do good as well. I have made a goal for myself this year to read a book a month. It's a tough goal, but it's trying to service this last one, never stop learning, growing, and challenging yourself. So if there's anything that you think kind of sucks and it's hard to do, but if you do it, you're going to be better off, I'd recommend setting a little bit of time every day to do that. For internships, we had 350 applications. Yep. I didn't take calls with everybody. So.
What makes them go to the top?
Yep.
Yeah, what's that thing that you say, okay, that puts you through to the next level of candidate? So it's not just having like a technical education background, because if I applied for a director of marketing job and said, yeah, I have a degree in graphic design and photography, nobody's gonna see that crossover. So for me, it's about laying out the actual book software and hardware skills that you have, as well as your soft skills that we talked about. I have laid out on my resume that I am a critical thinker and a problem solver and highly motivated and entrepreneurial. If you don't put those things out there, there's no way a resume is just going to get that message across. For graphic design specifically, work samples obviously are key, but not just the ones that you personally love, the ones that you think will be applied to the business that you're applying to. So when I first applied to Meyer, I had a portfolio that Dawn and 3 of us, because it was such a small team, crafted over for months. I was very fortunate to be able to do that. But I thought it was a really good question that the hiring manager asked me: what one project in this portfolio do you think best represents your personal style that you would bring here? So I had to, in that situation, it was a good situation because I could explain that, but in any other situation today where it's so highly competitive, you're not gonna really, I wouldn't count on the chance to be able to explain that in a sit-down interview. So to be able to show the work style that you wanna bring to this business, or even the effort that you have to do a project for that business without them asking you to, that's how I got this job now. So really about being innovative with your application, getting across more than just, your education. Not that that's not important, but it's so much more than that. What are some design and business goals that you've set for yourself in this upcoming year?
That's a great question. The business goal that we set that kind of falls in line with design and marketing was to extrapolate our annual conference into a monthly meetup series. So we're launching the Sports Innovation Meetup. First one's March 6th, if anybody wants to go to Atlantic City. And that was something that seemed really impossible. Like, how are we gonna corral people across the country once a month? So far, we have just over 100 people registered, and we've been marketing it for 2 weeks. So I am shocked, to be honest. But that's been our biggest goal, is figuring out how can we now bring together the community that we bring together annually on a more micro, intimate level. That's very specific to the business that I'm in now, though. And to do more personal projects, which I just started 2 weeks ago. Oh, yeah. The one that I started 2 weeks ago, like I said, I'm a very casual and honest person. I called my anxiety workbook. So I mentioned I've been reading. I mostly read philosophy, and my personal project was to create a series of posters of quotes from philosophers that I could then, what I did was I turned it into like a daily workbook where I could track, what my goals were for the year, for the day, for that minute, just to like calm down for a minute. And I created this like cute little icon set to track how I was feeling. I know there's apps that do that, but it's more fun when you make it yourself. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the personal project.
Some of the steps in your process before you design something. How do you come like?
That's a great question. Yeah, no, I love that question. We, at the firm that I work for now, use Google Drive, if you're familiar. So my favorite thing to do, and this is what I do like on nights and weekends when I should be relaxing or working through my anxiety workbook, is I set up Google Slides of inspiration. I have a Pinterest board too, but I really like just pulling like specific screenshots of things that inspire me. And I'll set up different slides for different elements, whether that's for a social media campaign, for our new website, which we're launching hopefully in a couple weeks, and for our conferences and events, because there's just so much flying out there. Like for me, I get overloaded with information. I can like very easily get overwhelmed with everything on Instagram and Pinterest and all that. So I try to pull snapshots of it and put it into a slide based on categories, and then work with my team to build out mock-ups or wireframes. We use InVision and InDesign, of course. So that's usually the step before I tell the graphic designer to go for it.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about pushback.
Yeah.
The CEO situation.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine being a singular designer, there will be described a lot of pushback.
Yep.
It's a certain amount of confidence, especially at the entry level or first couple years out, to deliver that. And it can be kind of like a soul crusher for that entrepreneurial spirit. Whether you're being no. And so I would love to hear you speak to that.
Sure.
I imagine everyone at some point will encounter that.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple of different ways that I would tackle it when that would happen. First is figure out, who are you talking to? Is this a person that actually matters, or just somebody who's talking to talk? So some people who would give me, some people that gave me a lot of attitude in the beginning were peers of mine. And like, if you're mad, that's fine. It's not my problem. I don't need to prove anything to you. I'm not going to worry about you. My boss or other project managers whose opinions did matter, but they weren't technically signing off on my work, was something that I wanted to take into consideration to make sure I won them over so that my job didn't suck in the long run. Like, I would like to have a good relationship with them. That was kind of like a pick your battle situation. When do I push back, and when do I just sure, whatever, this has your name on it and it looks stupid, like, that's your problem, not mine, is my go-to phrase. When it gets to the situation where it's your boss or your manager, or in a lot of cases the CEO, because I was working at smaller firms, it really is about how you communicate. Are you able to articulate why you want to do something a certain way, figure out why they want it a certain way, and how you can explain it to them in a way that they understand. I mean, what I had to learn the hardest way was that not everybody's thinking the same way I am. Wow, shocker, like, not people aren't inside my head. So I had to figure out a way to professionally explain why I thought something was going to be done better. I've also been very fortunate to work with nice people. Like, I'm super picky, as you can tell by now. And when I interviewed for those 75 jobs and had several offers on the table, like, I needed to make sure I was working with somebody who would respect my opinion. I'm not right all the time, but at least somebody who would listen and that I felt like I could learn from. I didn't want to be in a situation where I was making decisions and wouldn't have that valuable pushback or feedback. It's valuable to have people disagree with you. Nobody anywhere ever, especially in marketing, is going to agree 100% with what you're working on. And if you can't take those opinions in and try to come at it from their perspective the way you want them to do it for you, it's going to be a tough situation. Yeah.
At what point in your career did you realize that you were in a position to be able to turn down other job offers and take into consideration others?
Living with my parents. Yeah. That's what I did right after school, so that I didn't have to just take a job and be miserable. Like, truthfully, that was it. Does that help? Yeah. For some people that aren't in that situation, I understand it can be very tough, but again, try to find something that you are not going to be miserable every day. There's no use waking up and being unhappy ever. So to find something where, it pays the bills and you feel like you're learning, and even if it's not 100% what you want to be doing, I have Rich's phrase, like, pretty much stamped into my brain at this point, is to make portfolio pieces. So as long as you see some value in the work that you're creating, and your ability to communicate to other employers, what you did and why you did it, and how you could apply it to that job. It's incremental steps. Nothing's permanent. So, yeah.
You said, when you're in, you're interviewing people, you want to know that these people are people with value in this community. What are good tells in, the interview process to know,
It's definitely tough with one meeting. I like people that come to the table with ideas, or say, I saw this on your website and it could be done better, because nothing that we put out is perfect. So I love people that come and give me real examples of things that they would do differently or do better. Or we hired an intern on Monday who came to the table and said, you should have a podcast and you should have TikTok. Why don't you have these platforms? Let me launch them for you. And here's how I'm going to do it. So that was really valuable. He also asked me 20 questions, and it's not a waste of time. I love when people ask really thoughtful and tough questions and really try to take a deeper understanding of what we do. That's the best thing, asking questions. Yeah.
What would you say the biggest difference is between being a student and transitioning into that professional work environment?
Mm-hmm.
Did you find yourself having more creative freedoms? Was it more restrictive, or how did that work?
Really good question. You will never have as much time as you want to execute on something. It's also very different in the Northeast. I've worked in California briefly with a work study program or work transfer program at Meyer, and I was able to get things done there in an hour that they expected in a day and a half. So even in that situation, I would say you're never going to have as much time as you do now to think things through. So quick decision making and being able to pivot on your feet. I remember one of my friends who graduated with me, I will refrain from naming names, was joking with me that in her first job after school, she was having trouble going back and forth from iterating on designs and answering emails. Flat out, the amount of inbound that's coming at you, people interrupting you at your desk, people calling you, asking questions, having to stop because something's on fire, every day. Just having that, the flexibility, and you're going to get interrupted a million times. That was the hardest thing for me, was not being able to just sit and focus on something and work it through in the amount of time that I think I needed. You're not going to want to stay up all night ever again. So I don't do that anymore, but I did that plenty when I was here.
Can you stay motivated for getting burnout?
Also a really good question. I'm still working through that. Yeah, exactly. I have a really good support system. My friends and family. My sister's a licensed therapist, so that helps. Really does. I call her every day on my way home from work. Yeah. Having a support system that you can talk through, whether that's at work or your personal life, to be able to just not drive yourself crazy. And for me, I stay motivated by setting crazy goals for myself and taking a lot of vacations. So whether it's a long weekend, doesn't have to be expensive, we'll just rent a cabin in the Poconos, like go out in the woods. I live in the woods, so I also have that like kind of respite, but just go to a place that you feel like you can have some heads down time and take care of yourself. Use your nights and weekends to do that primarily. I work mostly 24/7, like that's just the kind of job I have. So I'm very good at communicating to my coworkers when I'm on that like off time. And I tend to go places that have no cell service, so there's no other option for them. So. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I am very fortunate that I haven't like lost my passion for it. I love design, and I never knew how much I loved it. I used to design brochures when my mom would go on vacation and newsletters to update her on like what was happening with the family when I was in elementary school. And nobody said to me, hey, you can do that as a career. So it kind of took me like a few twists and turns to figure out like what I had been doing for fun as a kid was something I could do full time. So I've never lost my passion and desire to like make the world a more thoughtfully created place. That's really like why I do what I do. But it can definitely get hard. It can be hard to stay inspired and like feel like you're always coming up with fresh ideas. And that's why even with Google Slides and Pinterest and Instagram and all the resources we have right now to document that kind of stuff. And like I always have lists and boards and stuff that I can go back to when I'm feeling kind of sluggish. And I've actually also really loved recently walking around cities. I don't live in Philadelphia, but I'm close enough, close to New York. London was like the most amazing design city. And just, I love walking around and like taking it all in and taking pictures and just trying to like open my eyes up to what's physically in front of me rather than just on a screen where you feel like you're seeing everybody's best of the best and highlight reel and that you're behind, and it can get really like overwhelming looking just online at stuff. So I've been trying to get out there more. Yeah.
How do you tackle a project that might have tighter design parameters?
Also a great question, especially if you're working at an agency or with like when we work with sponsors and other partners where they have like specific specifications. The role that I'm in now, it's more about being upfront about what my expectations are. So if we're bringing on a sponsor or a partner, I draft proposals as well. So I'll include in the proposal, like, this is where your logo will be implemented or your name is going to be used in these iterations. But for anything else that has like strict parameters for a client, especially in the agency world, it's all about communication. So if you feel like something's being a little restrictive, but you can prove that doing it a different way is better for the bottom line, then I think that would work.
How much creative freedom would you give a mid-level designer or someone like an intern when they're brought in on a project? Would you trust them enough to branch out?
My management style is like, I'm going to let you do things your way until it becomes an issue, if it ever becomes an issue. So I am all for allowing, like, I have a team of designers and marketing associates, not huge, I have 4 of us, but I will tell them what my expectations are in terms of like what the goals for the project are. And then if they can come back to me with 3 different ways or 1 really solid way of doing it, we have marketing meetings every week to review all the designs in progress. That's all the better. I'm not, like, I will never be the one that only comes up with the good ideas. So, do you want an internship? Do you want to come to Philly? A lot of good questions. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, so it's mostly like having the creative freedom until there's something wrong. But I will give feedback. I'm very much known for giving honest feedback, which can be tough in a lot of situations, but my team has come to know that I just want the best for everybody, and it's not personal.
In your like initial job searching process, how much did like connections and networking make a difference versus just like cold applying?
Yeah. I think I would have had a much easier time if I was going through my network versus just cold applying. All of the offers that I had for my first like real job, I would say, at Meyer, was through, like, that was all cold email, so not a high response rate. But at 76, it was directly through networking and knowing the person that I work with now, being a JMU alum. Even my first job at CCIU was through a network. That was an internship that I never thought I'd be able to have for 6 years. I did telecommuting while I was here too, 20 hours a week. And that was through my network. So I would say, like, to compare and contrast, it's so much easier when you're going through the people you know. It also allows you to have somebody on your side. So, like, somebody who makes a warm intro can vouch for you, and it helps you kind of get through, like, steps 1 through 3 if you have somebody make that intro for you. Yeah.
So out of the 75,
yeah,
how many were ads posted for jobs? And,
yeah.
I don't imagine there were 75 jobs posted for graphic.
No, I was New York. Yep. I did New York, Philly, and LA, I believe. I was willing to go anywhere for the right job, and more than willing to live at home for a job that I could save money for.
So were the majority of online, they were ads?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. The job I found, actually Meyer, was through Craigslist. I didn't get murdered, so yeah. I scoured the internet for any job opening anywhere.
Talk just a little bit about nuts and bolts, having interviewed and also now being the person who's interviewing.
Sure.
What you like to see, what you feel like went over well in interviews, or when you're interviewing people, what you've done particularly.
Yeah, definitely. To get in the door, having a great website is, like, super important for me. Even our marketing intern, she doesn't do anything visual. She had a website with all of her PR samples, social media copy samples, her bio, her volunteer, like, I got the full picture, and it also showed me how she was willing to go the extra mile for an internship by building a website to prove to me that she has good writing skills. So that's super important, just to, again, like, visually get in front of people and show that you can do what you're doing. For the actual interviews, once you come in, and this is like a personal preference, I personally love when somebody either has a big portfolio to show, which is what I had when I first was applying. Yeah. Oh my God, mine, I just found it in my basement. It's in, like, a carrying case this big. Having a printed, really nicely printed, it doesn't have to be bound, like, fancy, not expensive, for each person that's going to be in the interview, and bring extra copies, because they'll probably pull people in that you didn't expect. So for each person to be able to have right in front of them a printed copy of your work, to flip through at their leisure, then they throw it on their desk. Somebody walks by later and sees that and says, oh, what do you look like? Having those physical copies for people right as you're interviewing, and then to be floating around afterwards, is huge for me. Like, that's what I personally need from people. Even for design, it also gets into social media. People will bring, like, printed sample campaigns. If they're running through social media campaigns on their website and I can't flip through it at my leisure, it, like, drives me nuts. So I like to be able to look at it the way I want to look at it.
Is there still any need for seeing actual pieces and holding them and feeling the paper?
Definitely. It depends where you're applying and what their budget is, of course. I would not recommend going into a situation assuming that there's, like, limitless supply for really nicely bound stuff. But for you to be able to show creatively what you can do, like the sustainability report that we did had vellum or whatever it was. It was transparency paper. Yeah, there's a whole different effect seeing how that works, and, like, the emotional reaction you get from seeing that transparency over the ingredients. For a business that's trying to see, like, how they can engage with their clients more, or their shareholders, whatever it may be, having that in front of them is 10 times more valuable if it's the kind of piece that they need to see. The brand identity project, for example, the pictures of the suitcase worked better than me bringing in, like, a physical suitcase. So it really depends on the situation, but it can be super valuable, especially, like, printed marketing brochures and stuff. Mm-hmm.
Is there ever any conversation during or after the interview as to how well an individual packages themselves? meaning the physicalness of the portfolio that they bring with them, the completeness of it, the relationship between what they're doing as a personal identity and what they've showed physically as their portfolio?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The graphic designer that I just hired for the senior design position, she was, one of 2 out of 80 that fit my rigorous design criteria, partly because of what I learned here. People don't learn this in other schools. Just let me, on a tangent real quick, this is such a good design program. You're gonna go out and see from other schools, and not to knock any other schools. Your expectations, my expectations now are totally different, and I've really only been able to identify a couple of schools that have a program similar to this one. But back to it. Yeah, the designer that I hired now had her own personal brand. She's called Little Red Monkey. I found out because she had red hair. Everything was themed accordingly, and it just showed she was very put together. And it was very impressive the way she had crafted her own identity, and it helped me see, again, her personal aesthetic, which goes back to that question I was asked in my interview that I didn't have prepared, to be able to articulate what my personal aesthetic was, because that's probably what you're going to be bringing to this job. That was really helpful to see from her perspective.
Your initial thoughts and feelings on someone that applies to 76 and they don't hear back from you guys right away, and they send 1 or 2 emails?
Yeah. So there's actually 2 parts, 2-part answer. The first is that our founder and my boss has mandated that we respond to every single email within 48 hours. Whether that's somebody trying to sell me insurance or something I just don't even want. We reply to every single email, but that's not the norm. So follow-up emails are super helpful, especially at a certain time of day. So a Monday at 9 a.m., reminding somebody that you sent something the week before will put you to the top of their inbox when it's probably last on my priority list if you hadn't. I find that to be super helpful when people follow up. Don't follow up over the weekend. Don't follow up late at night. That's just, you're going to get lost in somebody's inbox. I also try to do it around 11:30 when people are walking into a lunch meeting and they just see it on their phone real quick, because I'm trying to sell people stuff too. I don't think follow-up's bad as long as you're, polite about it.
How's your experience transitioning into the sports industry? What recommendations would
Yeah.
you give someone pursuing that?
It's a good question. It was a shock because I took the job without knowing we were moving into sports. So they had told me that an athlete was joining the firm, but wouldn't tell me who. And I'm from New York originally, so I didn't think I would know who the athlete was or really care even. And then I took the job. We were investing in consumer-facing tech and health and retail. I was just really interested in getting into the finance space. And they said, okay, well, actually, it's Ryan Howard from the Phillies. I'm all right, I guess I do know who that is. And we're shifting completely into sports. So it was kind of a shock. I didn't really sign up for it, but I was happy that that was the direction we were going, and got to rebrand and do a lot of research on how companies brand themselves within sports business, which is very different than teams and leagues. For anybody interested in getting into sports, the opportunities now to be in sports are scary unlimited. For the athletes themselves who are brands, they have teams, the venture space, which we're in, the teams, the leagues, the players associations, they have business events everywhere. Come to mine. I bring everybody into those rooms. They are looking for talent, especially on the marketing and design side. It's really now a race for eyeballs. Social media, especially content creation, if you can do videos, motion graphics, that kind of stuff. So just get in front of them as much as possible. They're pretty transparent about where they are in terms of events. For example, I went down to the Super Bowl in Miami just for the week to go to business conferences. I left before the game. So it was really just for business. NFLPA had events. We spoke at some athlete brand events. We had some investment events that were focused around sports. And if there's if it's hard to afford to be able to do all of that, I understand it, but being here on the East Coast, there's so much going on in DC and Baltimore, New York, and Philly. Like, just show up and be honest about who you are and what you're looking for, and offer to help them, because it's not about you asking for handouts. You're actually there to provide them some value.
So, like when I'm trying to position my work in a new avenue, and I need to codify that and present it to a group that doesn't understand anything about design, and be able to be also helpful to know where do I start, and what have you felt like was, what gave you traction in those meetings? That's awesome. When we invest in a company, like I said, we'll help them either rebrand or establish a brand, or like just further enhance everything they're doing. So we do a brand audit, and I just learned this from my marketing intern is teaching me things, which is amazing. A SWOT analysis, if you're familiar with that, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So you really, it's so intense, So it's really all about asking like what the goals are, who are the decision makers, what are their goals, what are their motivations, who's the audience, and I love to look at competitors, like who do you think is in this space doing something well? And then what we do is I like live in the Google Drive. So we set up like Google Docs with all of the interview questions, do the SWOT analysis ahead of time and our recommendations, but then also ask really tough questions to the founders to have them talk through what are their motivations. A lot of times they'll talk through what they think their brand is and then who their audience is. And there's like just no way for that to meet in the middle. And they're living in a world where they're trying to build a business that doesn't exist, with technology that's sometimes really like cumbersome, and they're not thinking about those things. So they're usually very perceptive in that situation to our recommendations. They just haven't really thought about it that way. And I was talking to somebody yesterday or 2 days ago doing a brand analysis, and I said, like, this copy doesn't make sense. You're talking in very technical terms that like I just don't understand what you're even saying. He goes, well, that's not my strength. I'm like, okay, at least you're willing to admit that. But if I hadn't told him that this doesn't make sense to anybody but him, they just wouldn't have known. So it's a lot of like oversimplifying and over communicating the things that we take for granted as our expertise.
When you guys work through your design process, what are some challenges you face on the UX and user testing side of it?
The biggest challenge I'm working through right now is that Squarespace is like overhauling their system, and we have to now reprioritize moving from 7.0 to 7.1 rather than doing a million other things that we have to do. But for like user groups, I try to bring together our whole team. It's a pretty small team. We have investment analysts, several partners, and a marketing team. And try to figure out like at what stages are we bringing in the right decision makers or people that can give input that I value. So we actually have a few investors as well that I'll lean on that can kind of look at it as third-party outsiders, but also have a vested interest in how well we do. So our team will come at it at the very early stage, planning. Once we have a few, like for the website, for example, once we have a few pages set up, we shoot it over to the rest of the team, give them a deadline for sending feedback, or we'll do it in person, but that can kind of turn into a lot more than what you intend it to be. And then once everything's kind of like set and we feel like we're in a good place, it might seem like it's too late, but then we'll bring in a few outsiders just to see if there's any like glaring, issues or changes that they would make.
How do you deal with like time and working, and then also still creating for your own personal portfolio, like outside of work? What does your like weekly schedule?
Also something I'm still working through. I also commute about an hour each way because, like I said, I live in like a rural part of Pennsylvania. So between working, sleeping, eating, and driving, there's not like a lot of time. I'm also married, so I have a family. I'm trying to like balance a lot of that as well. I would say like nights for me are pretty much out of the question. I come home, I'm tired, I have to cook dinner, I need to like take care of the house. it's mostly weekends or like those short getaways that I'll have time to work on bigger personal projects. And then I'll try to end each night by reading something. So like even if it's just a couple pages, at least to like feel like I did accomplish something personal that day, I'll try to read a little bit at the end of the night. Yeah, just finding like short 15-minute time slots to scoop in what you want to do. Yeah, that's a really important point, because I feel like, and I was telling Dawn this earlier, that even in an agency or in-house, design is directly tied to marketing and business development. So whether you want to eventually be a creative director or eventually be like a director of marketing or a project manager, chief marketing officer, like whatever it may be, art director, you're going to need to have that business acumen, the ability to articulate goals and a plan to execute. Budgeting is still going to be part of it either way, especially as an account manager in an agency where you're like directly reporting to your clients. So those fundamentals, I got through high school. I took a lot of business classes in high school, through a year here at JMU, and a lot of just research on my own and asking questions to people that I felt I could learn from. So at the first job at Meyer, when I was helping my manager write proposals, I would like read through it like a fine-tooth comb, like the terms and conditions, like 20 pages. I would read through that. It's mostly like legal. It's like they're legal disclaimers. It's boring stuff, but I tried to just learn like exactly what people were putting out there from their business. And now as I freelance, I use a lot of that same language to cover myself. I don't have an LLC. I just do it like on the side. So it's really just about like taking in as much information from your surroundings and asking the right questions to the right people. You're going to get a lot of different answers, and it's going to be up to you to say like, sift through the BS. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for listening.